preparing for a trade fight. President Trump not backing down from his hardline stance on trade as he prepares to meet with the leaders from the G7 industrialized countries tomorrow. It will be the first chance that world leaders have to confront the president in person since the U.S. slapped tariffs on steel and aluminum imports from Canada, Mexico, and the European Union last week. Joining me right now to weigh in from Washington is a member of the House Financial Services Committee, Congressman Sean Duffy of Wisconsin. Congressman, it's good to see you. Thank you so much for joining us.
It's great to be with you.
So what's your take on this? Are you concerned about the fallout from these trade tensions, particularly when it comes to the retaliatory measures? We've heard from all of the above, and they're going to come right back at us with similar tariffs on imports.
And they're trying to use politics as to who they target with regard to the tariffs. So in Wisconsin, Donald Trump, as you know, won by a very slim margin. He won up in my district. It's a swing set of voters, and so they're targeting cranberries. We produce the most cranberries in America in my district. We make the premier ginseng in the world. We're world famous in Asia for Marathon County ginseng in my district. They're targeting ginseng now too. Cheese and dairy, they're targeting those products. So I got to tell you what, though, I think that though my constituents are a bit nervous about how this is going to play out, they support the president because they understand that free trade has to be fair, and they understand the world has not been fair to America. They want him to fight and make this a better playing field, which means in the long run they're going to be able to sell more of their products in a global stage, as opposed to having access to markets, but a more limited access because of unfair trade practices by our trade partners.
Yeah, but I mean, what about that? I mean, you mentioned dairy. Aren't you looking at a shortage in Wisconsin of dairy? I mean, isn't that going to turn prices up? Governor Scott Walker now creating a task force to focus on coming up with recommendations to save the state's dairy industry, which produces roughly, 14% of the country's milk. So if we're going to have tariffs on that, when you're already talking about a shortage, doesn't this send prices sky high and impact voters?
No, that's first of all, by the way, that 14%, Maria, we make the best milk in America, too. Our cows produce the tastiest milk, so make sure you drink Wisconsin dairy milk. That aside, so when prices go down, our farmers milk more cows. When our prices go up, they milk more cows. So, no, we have a supply and demand problem. Our prices are low right now. We have a glut of supply. And so what we have to do is figure out how do we actually get a balance in this market where our farmers can actually get a fair price for their milk, where they can actually make a profit. We don't just have big farms, but our little small Wisconsin dairy farms can survive and thrive. And Canada has not been fair in this space. And so I think with regard to NAFTA, the way President Trump has played this out, we're going to have Canada come to the table and renegotiate how they deal with dairy between our two countries. And in the end, that's going to help the Wisconsin dairy farmer. So
you want a bilateral deal with Canada and a bilateral deal with Mexico, like the president has suggested? You don't?
No, I'm fine with NAFTA, but I'm saying during this negotiation, because the president has held out for a longer period of time, I think he's a bit freaked out, Canada and Mexico. They're coming to the table and they're willing to negotiate on things 4 months ago, 5 months ago, they weren't willing to negotiate. And for us, this dairy issue with Canada is incredibly important.
Yeah. No, I get you. And I understand the president wanting to play poker in some sense, come out and explain the issue, $800 billion deficit with the rest of the world. Yeah. We need better deals. I get that. But how worried are you that this goes horribly wrong? That, in fact, we see retaliation from all of these countries. We've already heard they're going to come up with the same tariffs, 25%. And it sends prices higher, sends the economy into recession, and really turns off voters.
Listen, we should all be nervous about that. I mean, this is somewhat high-stakes poker, as you mentioned, Maria. But the benefit of actually negotiating better trade deals, I think, is fantastic for Americans' future. But the problem is it can go wrong.
Yeah.
But even if you look at China, I mean, if you don't deal with China's unfair trade practices, their tariffs and barriers, or the fact that they steal our IP, if we don't deal with them today, is it going to be easier to deal with China 10 or 15 years from now when their economy is that much bigger or their military is that much stronger? You have to deal with these problems right now. It should have been dealt with, 20 years ago.
Right. No, the China story I totally agree with. They've been stealing from us for decades, and I think the president is right to push back. Let me ask you about immigration. House Republicans are meeting this morning for a potential make-or-break negotiation to try and hammer out an immigration deal. I mean, what are the major sticking points? Is it all about DACA? And where do you stand on these so-called dreamers?
So I would tell you that we have to figure out what we do with the DACA young people. They're not all kids, but some of them are now into adulthood. How many get into the program? About 800,000 under Barack Obama. President Trump said, let's do 1.8 million. What is that number? When we let them into the country, do they have a pathway to citizenship? Can they become U.S. citizens? What do you do with their parents who brought them in illegally? Those are all sticking points that we have to navigate and negotiate. And then what do we do with the border wall? The president wants $25 billion for the border. Well, one Congress can't bind the next Congress, so we can appropriate $25 billion today, but there's a new Congress in January. And if they try to take that money away, you have what happened to Ronald Reagan in '86, where you have amnesty today for border security tomorrow, and border security never comes. So trying to navigate and negotiate and tie those two things together is going to be important. We have a 2-hour meeting this morning. I'm going from you to this meeting. And I think that, from the Freedom Caucus to guys like, Will Hurd and Jeff Denham and Carlos Curbelo, who this is a really important issue for them politically, we're going to be able to come to a consensus on how you deal with DACA and border security. And the bottom line is the Senate says, well, we can't do what the House is going to do. And we have to say, I don't care about the Senate. We're going to pass a bill that can pass the House. And then let's see what the Senate does, because you have Democrats who say, I care about these kids.
Right.
Let's help the kids out. But I don't think they want to actually help the kids. They love the political issue.
But they're not really helping the kids. Right.
They're not helping the kids. And I think when we send a bill to the Senate, you're going to see them contorted and twisted, trying to figure out how they deal with a Republican package that actually helps immigrant kids who came in, no fault of their own, as young children.
Congressman, what a week we have coming up. We've got the Kim Jong-un, Donald Trump meeting on the 12th. We've got, obviously, the Federal Reserve is meeting, and you've got the ECB meeting, but also the Justice Department's internal watchdog, the Inspector General, coming out with its report, reportedly concluding that James Comey defied authority at times during his tenure as FBI director. This comes from ABC News, and they say a draft of the Inspector General's report specifically uses the word insubordinate to describe Comey's behavior. It criticizes former Attorney General Loretta Lynch for her handling of the Clinton email investigation. Your reaction, and what are you expecting in the coming weeks from this IG report and its implications?
Well, I think what this IG report is going to show, if the reports are accurate, the leaks are accurate. And by the way, this is another example of how there's no secrets in this town, Maria. Everything leaks out. And so I think this is going to be vindication that our concern about how the FBI and the DOJ were playing politics, how they weren't playing in a way that they traditionally have played in run-ups to elections or with presidential candidates. We're going to be vindicated in our concern over the last year and a half in regard to what the FBI and the DOJ actually did with regard to Hillary Clinton and to Donald Trump. And I think the most important thing here, Marie, is America has to have faith and trust in the FBI and the DOJ. I mean, we give them incredible power to keep us safe. And if we don't trust them, we take that power away, and then we're less safe. So we have to clean house. We have to shine the light into what went wrong. We have to fix it. We have to get good people back into these agencies so we can continue with the power that they have, that they use appropriately, but actually keep the next 9/11 from happening, or the next internal terrorist attack from happening.
You say we're all going to be vindicated. What does that mean? Are we going to see accountability for this stuff if, in fact, they did tip the scales or try to tip the scales in favor of Hillary Clinton and try to and away from Donald Trump?
Well, I think when I say vindication, I mean we're going to expose what did Loretta Lynch do? What did Jim Comey do?
We'll actually
what
get
did
the
Andrew
details.
McCabe do? Yeah, we'll get the details, and I think we can learn from those mistakes. It's not my call on are they prosecuted? Did they commit crimes? I don't know that. I haven't seen the report.